10 minutes, maybe. Sorry?
Brightness. Can you adjust it? Like,
this is a screen. Very bright. See how it's washed out? Sometimes it's the brightness of the screen. The brightness of the okay. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna. So, thank you for coming. We're going to continue today to talk about the films that Srila Prabhupada saw during this time. He produced from ISKCON Cinema. ISKCON Cinema was founded in 1973 when we first released our documentary, Hare Krishna People. Actually, when we began that production in the spring of 1973, and then finished that first film, premiered at the Mayapur Festival in 1974. And Srila Prabhupada wanted that distributed very widely. And he said it was the profits made from that film make more films. And this is one of the films that was, actually it was the third film that was released on New Vrindavan. I'll just go through a few of the stills from that film and talk a little bit about it. I mentioned, I believe, yesterday in Denver, after filming Srila Prabhupada in Los Angeles extensively for his biography film, we went to Denver and set up our camera in front of his Vyasa-san and to film more. But he didn't like the bright lights, number one. And then also he said, whether I'm sitting here on the Vyasa-san in Denver or Los Angeles, what is the difference? So I filmed him quite a few hours of footage in Los Angeles. And he indicated it's not necessary to film so much. So he wanted to know what I would do. And he invited, actually Kirtananda Swami had invited me to come to New Vrindavan to make a documentary on their community. So Srila Prabhupada thought that was a good idea. And then this is the result. It's called The Spiritual Frontier. In the making of this film, we actually, our first thought was not to use a narrator, just to use people speaking in the film. And we actually made the film along that line, but it didn't. In our filmmaking, we always got a lot of feedback from devotees. So we got some feedback on that film, and it wasn't so favorably received. So we started from scratch again. We just redid the whole thing with the narrator. And it came out a lot better. So here's the Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan, sunrise. And then we talk a little bit about the original Vrindavan. And we go to Srila Prabhupada's room. And then we show him. And then we start the film on New Vrindavan. The spiritual community in the West, Prabhupada actually said that New Vrindavan and New Vrindavan are not different. So whenever there is the temple and kirtan and spiritual practices going on, that is the spiritual world. Actually, we'll go back to this. Mangalananda Prabhu did the music for this, which was really, really good. Did a very good job. We saw the original Golden Avatar studio yesterday in our Hare Krishna People film. So the community at that time was it was only about 4 or 5 years old at the time, but so much had been done. And Srila Prabhupada was very pleased. This is the original farmhouse, the original Vrindavan farmhouse. And Srila Prabhupada went there in 1969, I believe, and gave discourses. And there's some black and white pictures of that. We don't have them here. But he really appreciated the struggle that the devotees went through to establish this community. This is Kirtananda Swami. And these are the deities right from Vrindavan Chandra. We may know the history. Kirtananda Swami had some difficulty in later years, but Srila Prabhupada so much appreciated his service. On his arrival in 1976 in New Vrindavan, he said nobody could have done this except Kirtananda Swami. So he was very, very much pleased with his efforts. This is a shot we did we had the camera actually on the ground, and his team of horses drove over it. And you can see them approaching the camera. And then we turned the camera around, they did another pass, and we got them going that way, crossing over. So they were working with the horses, the cows, all the things that Srila Prabhupada wanted were going on. Of course, they also had machines, but the idea was to phase those out later. Of course, once we become dependent on machines, it's very difficult to go back. It's an experience. Is there peanuts? This is a scene of the kirtan in the temple. It was actually slow motion, shot in slow motion. And all the devotees are throwing flowers on the kirtan. And this is a scene from our kindergarten school. The teacher's talking about the Vrindavan and the cowherd boys playing like different animals, birds and frogs and so forth. And then we go into the scene, we dissolve into the scene of the little children dressed up as cowherd boys. And we have a special effect around the lens. Actually, we took Vaseline and put a piece of glass over the lens and smeared Vaseline around the circle, around the lens on the outside of the glass, and that gave it kind of an easy, mysterious effect. And then we quote from Srila Prabhupada's books, Krishna book, how the trees were bending down to touch the lotus feet of the Lord with their fruits, and how the cows were giving their milk. And these cows were giving huge, huge amounts of milk. Reports were, it's hard to believe, 40 liters a day from one cow. 40 liters. Huh?
It's possible.
Yeah.
It goes when it's on the peak, and there are many crops that can give it.
It was amazing. They had huge amounts of milk. And we actually filmed the birth of this cow. This is a brand new baby cow. And the mother licking. And it was quite graphic in the film. We wonder whether we should have done that. Especially for Indians. And then we had a scene where the devotee takes the milk, takes the nipple and squirts milk on the camera. Again, we had a piece of glass over the lens. And when this scene came on, actually I didn't mention that the premiere of this film was in Los Angeles, and the temple was absolutely packed. Srila Prabhupada was there, and Kirtananda Swami flew in with all kinds of milk sweets and even ice cream packed in dry ice for Srila Prabhupada. When Prabhupada saw this scene, he was on the Shyasasan, he rose up and he said, "I want some of those." It was such a joyous occasion, that premiere. This is Haladini Mataji, who was a very, very hard worker in Vrindavan. She actually went to Africa to serve Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and she actually gave her life in protection of the devotees, trying to protect the devotees. That was a very heavy scene over there. So we show how all these, the bounty from the earth is harvested and then offered to the deity. And then the Sunday feast. And the dip in the old swimming hole. And then some of the arts that the Matajis were performing for the pleasure of the deity. Actually, there should have been another picture here of Ishani. She was an expert jeweler. And she did amazing things for the crowns and jewelry for the deities. Served there many, many years. So the wood is cut in the forest and hauled out by the oxen. So this is construction on Srila Prabhupada's palace. That's Soma Prabhu, blonde hair, and Nitya Ditya is next to him. They're hammering on the roof of the new temple. And I explained yesterday how this was originally meant to be a temple, a Govindaji temple, but they instead made it Prabhupada's palace. And Prabhupada was actually pleased with that, because he said this is proper that the spiritual master should be honored first. Of course, the palace has become very famous all over the world, actually. And in North America, they have many tours. Every year, people come to see the palace. And this is stained glass done by the devotees. And they did everything themselves, just cutting marble, mining marble. The floor in the palace is amazing. It's all done by devotees. Then we show simple living by a Grihastha family. Prabhupada actually asked that little houses be built out of the local materials, mud and clay and so forth. So they built quite a few of these little Prabhupada houses, they called them. And in the final scene, we're in a helicopter, flying over the hill, the devotees having kirtan. So New Vrindavan was quite advanced at that time. Again, it was very early in ISKCON. And Srila Prabhupada was immensely pleased with their efforts and wanted those type of communities to be duplicated all over the world. And we know that in his last years, he wanted to go to Gitanagari to establish Varnashram. Varnashram, we were discussing the other day, is most easily established in our own communities. Of course, it can be practiced anywhere, but especially it's easier if we have our own self-contained communities. So the next film we're going to discuss is called Spark of Life. This has an interesting history. The Bhaktivedanta Institute members asked us to do a film to defeat the scientist arguments, how life comes from matter. And so they had their current ideas. And, materialists have of course, their ideas are always developing and changing. So we were hesitant to do it based on those arguments, trying to defeat those current arguments because they're changing. Eventually the film would become out of date. So we decided to do the film based on Bhagavad Gita, the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, basically how we're not the body. And this is a discussion between two college students. We filmed on the University of California campus of Los Angeles. And so these are all students at the time. And then these are two devotees who were the principal actors. And the one on the left is taking a course in Bhagavad Gita, and he's very excited about that newfound knowledge. But his friend on the right is very skeptical. He can't believe these things are true. He just goes by what can be observed, like the scientists, which is very limited, of course. So, in the film, we present the karmic idea of how the materialist idea of how the earth formed and how life formed. So originally there was a cosmic explosion, and material elements cooled, and then the primordial soup formed, and then life came about somehow or other. So this person, here he is in his science lab. So he's meditating on all these ideas, his current ideas from the material science point of view, and his friends. So he's thinking about these things. And here's a conversation going on. And then we filmed, this took a long time to catch. This is actually a butterfly coming out of the cocoon. We waited for days and days to catch the shot. The cocoon was in our house, our apartment in Los Angeles. And then at one point we wanted to show the progression of growth of the body, but that the soul is constant. So we filmed the birth of a newborn baby, Rishabdev Prabhu's baby. And this is about 5 minutes after birth. And then we just went through a progression of showing hands develop. That was our idea, to show the changing body. So these are just a few of the shots of hands getting older and older. And the final hand on the deathbed. And then he's back in the classroom listening to his professor, who's Damodar Das. Damodar Prabhu was the filmmaker we mentioned, who took many of the films in the early days. Swamiji, Gurudev, so on. He did an excellent job as a scientist, or as a teacher, science teacher. So then we take a street scene, people walking on the street, and we slow the motion down, and then Rishabdev, who's there, turns into a skeleton. And we can see the different bodily parts. And we analyze the body like that. It's getting closer and closer. And then we go actually down to the atom and show that life doesn't come from any of these bodily parts or mechanisms, but the life actually comes from the soul. And then we have the soul in the heart, and in the film, this yellow, it's meant to be consciousness, expands from the soul and fills the body. So this is described in Bhagavad Gita, how the soul, how the consciousness is distributed throughout the body via the blood. Actually, the blood passes through the heart in contact with the soul and carries the consciousness throughout the body. Therefore, sometimes we sleep on our arm and it becomes numb. That's because the blood is cut off. It's not carrying the consciousness throughout the body. And then we had the scene of, these are all devotees, and they were coached by a devotee nurse. She was also in the scene. And they're doing an open heart surgery. And the man goes into cardiac arrest, and he dies on the operating table. So the point was that no amount of medical science can help us if we're meant to depart. And here's the cameras in the hole, meant to be the grave. That's the priest upside down. And he's throwing the first spoon of earth down onto the body. And the point here is that no amount of prayers or lamentation can bring the body back, bring the life back to the body. Although the body is there, the person is gone. And here he is in his science class again, reflecting on the soul in the body. There's a caterpillar on his page. And in the end, he comes to understand the logic and sensibility of the arguments for the soul, and he accepts.
What's the name of the studio?
This is Agastya Prabhu on the right and Virya Naduru on the left. They're both Prabhupada disciples. So we thought we would show one of the films. And, certainly we have access to these films, although not always. We have our 2 DVD set. It's on Cinema Classics. But I just wondered how many devotees have seen Hare Krishna people. Can you raise your hand?
I assume I've seen it, but I don't really remember.
You might want to see it again.
Yes. It was a long time ago I saw these films.
I think it was.
Yeah, I saw them.
They're interesting to look at again.
Yeah, this I've seen before.
You've seen them?
Yeah.
And we've seen this.
In Krishna's.
Yeah, the older devotees have seen probably all of them at one point or another. But
That was a long time ago.
it was a long time ago. The last one was released in 76, so these 4 in 76.
There was also one fish out of water was another film.
Yeah, that was a play, or no, a slideshow of a play. That was done by the BBT. I'd like to find a copy of that if we have a copy. I don't know, it may be lost. So would you like to see one of these films?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Okay, so you can probably show the Hare Krishna people. Prabhupada saw that at least 20 times.
Yeah. My parents saw this film, where sparkled light. And then it was funny because they were looking at it, and then when we got to the point when they showed the hands, then I guess they don't know whether like the old Catholic's hand. Oh, that's weak.
Any questions so far? Or not?
Yeah, what about you said this, they had this, what do you call it, slideshows also, but that was a BBT production. And you said they're not all there, or?
Well, I haven't seen a copy of that anywhere for years. It would be a shame to lose that. It was a nice show, wasn't it? You saw that?
Which one? It's fish.
The fish.
Yeah. Many times in Krishna's. No.
And then something suggesting that I can't remember something was dying.
Actually, I'd like to read one thing here. I forgot about that. This is from Pranadasi. She recalls the premiere. And Srila Prabhupada decided to see the new movie that HG Yadubara Prabhu made called Spiritual Frontier about New Vrindavan. And Kirtananda Swami flew out to look at that movie with him. So one evening it was being shown in the temple room. Prabhupada sat on his Vyasa-san as we proceeded to view this wonderful movie of New Vrindavan community and what was happening there. Prabhupada liked it very much. About midway there was a close-up of a wok with a puri being cooked and puffed up, and Prabhupada leaned over to Krishna Maharaj and said, "I would like one of those puri." But then at the end of the movie, he was glorifying Kirtananda Swami and the work that he had been doing in New Vrindavan. And he was so pleased, he said, I bless Kirtananda Swami to go back to Godhead in this life. And all the devotees broke out in this cheer. And in his magnanimity, in his big heart, he said, what Kirtananda? And he took his right hand and he placed it in the direction of Kirtananda, which was in the corner on the left. Then he started sweeping it across the heads of all the devotees in the temple room. And he said, I bless all of you to go back to Godhead. And then as his hand was moving, I remember feeling like, oh, Srila Prabhupada, please make sure your hand comes all the way this way. Because it was all the way to the far right up in the balcony. And he did. It was a majestic movement, blessing all his devotees back to Godhead. And we all broke out in this big cheer. Jai Srila Prabhupada. We were assured to definitely go back to Godhead by the mercy of the pure devotee. So, actually, this you may need another computer. Where is it?
Go now?
This is what I'm going to play this with.
What should I tell them that they should
Do you need to bring this computer?
Of course, it is right.
Let's see. We had a lot of technical challenges in producing our films, especially with the digital technology. All these films were produced on 16mm film. And you could hold it, you could splice it, it was right there. With digital technology, sometimes everything crashes and it's gone. So actually, my realization with computer technology produces quite a bit of anxiety.
I can't get hold of Kunda that it's answering machine going on, but Maharaj going up and picking up his computer.
Thank you. Everything in the 16mm filmmaking was physical. You could touch it, work with it. Yeah.
Are you or Mother Vishaka writing a book on your time with Prabhupada?
She's writing her memoirs. And I guess I should do the same. She's doing something. I'd like to maybe publish a book with all our pictures, still pictures, and then talk about the stories behind the pictures. But for every picture, there's a story.
It's a treasure for us who haven't met Prabhupada. And I met Mother Vishaka, and I heard someone instructed her that it's good that Prabhupada's daughters, spiritual daughters, write a book because he was so personal with his daughters. And for us who haven't met him to understand that.
Yeah, actually, she's working on editing the book. Malati started that book, and there's been, I think, 300 interviews at least. So she's in the process, she's working very hard to edit that. And she's doing one a day, so it's taking another year to finish. I think they're more than 3 years. Yeah, that's very, very important. We preserve those memories. It's one of the reasons we interviewed for our HG Prabhu series. As many devotees as we could interview. And actually I have I've included about a third of what I have available. So I'd like to, edit those and release them on MP3, the audio. There's a lot more material, wonderful stories that we just couldn't include. The film was so long, and you have to fit everything into the film.
Yadubara Prabhu?
Yes.
Just what you mentioned, like we say when we interviewed Yadubara Prabhu, Thomas Krishna, so there's more material than is published.
Yeah.
How much would you say?
There's twice as I included about 1/3 of what I had.
So when will we get the rest in MP3 or something?
I'm not sure, it's a big job.
Must be
We'll try to work on it this winter. It's about 60 hours long.
How many Prabhupada disciples have you interviewed for
We
this?
reviewed about 500.
It's a great task. It's very lively.
There's 335 speaking series.
So it's the majority is on the box, I think.
See my messy desktop.
Yes.
How many of these films have you seen?
I actually think hardly any of them. I can't quite remember because I haven't been that much in areas preaching and living where people have these films, I left Australia in '89 and since then I've been in all kinds of places where these films are not known. So I actually don't think I've seen any of them. Maybe I've seen something in Australia the first 4 years, but I can't really remember.
What year was that?
What?
What year was that?
85.
Yeah, probably the most important of all these films is the biography film, Srila Prabhupada, Your Evermore Wisher.
I have seen something what they show in Radhadesh, in their auditorium they show something, but I have no idea if this is anything that you did. It's a really old introductory thing to ISKCON, but it might have even been produced by you, I don't know.
Sorry about this.
Maybe you could just show us some other pictures or something. Do you have anything? Just show us and talk. Oh, well, there's the computer. He is put on the computer, so all right, let's look it up.
Watching nature grow, wishing I could know all about the things I see. Seeing life and death in a passing breath, life is such a mystery to me. For so many days.
The World of Hare Krishna we had in 10 languages. That was the most. So there was a demand all over the ISKCON world for ISKCONs in different languages. You see the slow motion of the cows up there?
His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, was born a pure devotee. In 1933, Prabhupada was accepted as a disciple by a bona fide spiritual master and ordered to spread Krishna consciousness to the English-speaking world. Then in 1965, at the age of 70, Prabhupada, a renounced saintly person with neither friends nor money, came from India to New York City to fulfill the instructions of his spiritual master. Prabhupada was destined to spark a revolution in consciousness, to ignite the Hare Krishna explosion. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Transcendental knowledge was first spoken by the Lord Himself, and has been passed down since that time from spiritual master to disciple in an unbroken chain. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami, and Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In 1966, Prabhupada founded the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, or ISKCON, widely known as the Hare Krishna movement. Prabhupada translates on the dictaphone original Sanskrit and Bengali scriptures into English. The tapes are then sent to ISKCON Press in New York. The entire operation, from typing to illustrating to printing, is carried out by the Krishna devotees, all of whom serve without salary. Krishna is recognized as God by all the great saints in the scriptures of India. He is the all-attractive person in the reservoir of pleasure. To pass on the science of self-realization, Prabhupada is presenting the Bhagavad Gita as it is, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Nectar of Devotion, and many other philosophical works. From a Los Angeles warehouse, these literatures are shipped to centers in the United States and abroad. Within a few years, Prabhupada and his disciples have organized an ambitious book distribution program that every year sees thousands of tons of books distributed around the world. devotees say that by reading these books and chanting the names of God, a person can attain God consciousness even in this difficult and disturbed age. The most popular mantra is the now familiar Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This chanting resounds from London to Mexico City, from Paris to Tokyo, from New York to Nairobi. Festival. This festival is held in major cities around the world. Prabhupada says God is great and we are very small. He is the supreme proprietor and everything should be used in his service. All living creatures are sons of God and are therefore equal. Thus Krishna consciousness is beyond any sectarian and national limitations and is the perfect peace formula. Prabhupada denounces so-called gurus who claim to be God. Such gods are very cheap. I am not God, and you are not God. We are all eternal servants of God.
Being separated from Krishna, they do not know. We are part and parcel of God and Krishna. We are not in that.
We asked Jadurani Devi Dasi, one of the artists at ISKCON Press, to tell us about her involvement in the Hare Krishna movement.
So I met Srila Prabhupada in 1967, and I was up in his apartment, and the first thing that he said to me, because previously I was thinking that I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So he said, when you reach the top, then everything else is included. So that sort of answered all the questions. It's like if you have $1 million and all your $10 problems are solved. So he was implying that when you become Krishna conscious, then all of your other desires and aspirations and ambitions, everything is fulfilled just by taking the path of Krishna consciousness. And then he asked if I could come to his morning classes, and I started coming. And then when he saw that I had a propensity for painting, so he gave me 2 businesses. He said, just be attached to Krishna and to painting. So this is Keshava. Keshava is the name of Krishna, and it means one who has fine hair. So God has hair, he has a face, he has a body, he's not impersonal. He's the creator and the maintainer and destroyer of everything, and he's the dearest friend of every living entity. And before you're asking how my consciousness is things, but just like a lily leaf or something like that that's on the water, even though it's on the water, it's not touched by the water. So even though we're in the material world, because we're working for a pure devotee and for Krishna, we're not touched. And we feel satisfied. Satisfied to be in association with Krishna's Lord Spirit.
Another engagement is the making of spiritual sky incense. The Krishna devotees believe that since everything belongs to Krishna, everything can be used in his service, including business. Spiritual Sky Scented Products Company is a commercial enterprise started by Srila Prabhupada's disciples to gather funds for use in spreading Krishna consciousness. The company markets and manufactures incense, oils, shampoos, soaps, and other scented products. Spiritual Sky has doubled its profits each year since 1969 and is now America's leading incense manufacturer. A computer at the Los Angeles factory keeps the accounts, checks inventory, and bills incense orders. And like any other Krishna devotee, chants Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
What's the lead time on this thing? Well, the thing is, the board takes about 6 weeks to get this type of material.
Prabhupada's disciples handle all aspects of the operation, from dipping the sticks in scented oils to packaging, sales, distribution, and manufacturing display racks.
So the quantity is
From the Los Angeles factory, spiritual sky products are shipped to temples around the world. I never expected such a big business to blossom, Prabhupada has often said. Now it is our duty to use it to serve Krishna. When people buy spiritual sky products, they will automatically think of Krishna and be benefited. Los Angeles is not only the center of incense manufacturing, it is also ISKCON's Western World headquarters. The devotees assemble daily at 4:30 a.m. for the deities of Radha and Krishna. At the time of initiation, the disciple vows to abstain from extramarital sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling. Initiation and marriage rites are performed by ancient Vedic fire sacrifice. Initiates also vow to chant some 25,000 names of God daily at 2-hour feet, and to serve the spiritual master without reservation. Marriage means working together in Krishna consciousness. We asked the young husband why he joined the Krishna consciousness movement.
As a student, I was sensitive to the problems confronting our society, and I could see that our leaders were unable to deal with it. Despite their promises for materialistic advancement, I could see that people were becoming more and more dissatisfied. Even though we are very advanced materially, something very basic is missing in our way of life. By understanding Krishna consciousness, I realized that here was a philosophy that could fill the gap in our materialistic culture. By providing scientific, practical understanding of God, Krishna consciousness can give meaningful purpose to life, and it is the duty of the leaders to provide this educational instruction to the people. Therefore, I begun the process of Krishna consciousness, and I advocate it as a practical solution to the problems of our modern technological society.
Some of the women learn the devotional art of making dresses for the deity of Krishna and his consort Radha. Milk, grains, fruit, and vegetables are bought wholesale by the society and sold to its members at nominal prices. Devotees shop and prepare food for their families in a spirit of service to Krishna. The children are taught to see Krishna, or God, as the central point of life. Education is offered at Gurukul in Dallas, Texas, for school-age children. Gurukul, or the place of the spiritual master, is staffed solely by devotees. Here the children learn the science of Krishna, as well as reading, writing, and arithmetic, and, believe it or not, Sanskrit. Lives in full-time association with the children.
Another word starts with C. Kimmy? Chandramukhi? What's the word that starts with A? Really? Apple? Who is the most merciful of all of Krishna's incarnations? What's his name? The most merciful incarnation of Krishna. Yeah? John. Emily?
Depict the pastimes of Krishna. Generally, they concern the slaying of a demon by Krishna, or the Lord's activities with his devotees. Here's one of Krishna's pastimes enacted. The devotees explain that God is not an old man with a white beard. He is the reservoir of pleasure. And here he swings joyfully with Radharani. Thus the children learn that God is not a fearsome, alien, or vindictive personality. He is the supreme friend, and he allows himself to be pushed on a swing. Krishna devotees are also teaching in high schools and colleges around the world.
It's divided into two syllables, Krishna and Ram. And together these two words mean the greatest pleasure. Rama also means the reservoir of all pleasure. The more people that chant, the more you'll feel this room becomes surcharged with spiritual energy. This is a fact.
Transcendental sound vibration is made available on radio conscious community in the West Virginia Hill Country. Kirtanananda Swami, president of the community, explains the project in this way.
Hare Krishna. We'd like to welcome you to New Vrindavan. New Vrindavan is Srila Prabhupada's country ashram, one of his original ideas for spreading Krishna consciousness in the Western world. It is a great vision of presenting to everyone, not only in this country but in the whole world, how one can become Krishna conscious, living just as Krishna lived in Vrindavan, depending on nature and the cows. Simply on the basis of this simple life, of some fruits and vegetables and milk, man can become Krishna conscious. The economic problem is solved very simply, and with the balanced time saved, one can prosecute Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada wrote us a number of years ago that if we all want to develop the concept of New Vrindavan, we don't need to have much machinery. We don't have to become very much concerned with the modern amenities, but simply to depend on nature's beauty and the cows. So we're very fortunate here at New Vrindavan. So many cows, they're coming, and the milk is coming. Daily now, we're getting more than 700 pounds of milk. And from the milk, we're making cheese, butter, ghee, so many nice sweets, rasgulla, sandesh. Now we're beginning to distribute these things to our temples, and also they're distributing to so many people all over that everyone can see what is this nice life of Krishna consciousness. What Srila Prabhupada is giving us is a way of life, a way of awakening our senses to the eternal beauty of Krishna. And Vrindavan is the land of Krishna. And now we are constructing here Govindaji temple. This temple will exhibit to the world this wonderful process of deity worship, or seeing Krishna in the temple. We want everyone to wake up to the blissful life that Srila Prabhupada is offering us. It is not dry, but it is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss.
Sundays, ISKCON holds an afternoon festival with free feasting and philosophy. This Mexico City Sunday festival is typical. The women often make elaborate garlands. Generally, if a person sees a beautiful flower, he offers it to his girlfriend, Prabhupada says. But if you're in Krishna consciousness, you think, oh, what a beautiful flower. Let me offer it to Krishna. Here, the Colombian who is the president of the Mexico City Temple, tells the Sunday guests that one should learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. The self-realized person can give you knowledge because he has seen the truth.
Entonces, simplemente aceptamos, desde una simple mirada, aceptamos a un maestro espiritual
and even onions are shunned. Various savory dishes are prepared according to ancient recipes. The Krishna diet supplies the body with all necessary nutrients without pandering to the whims of the senses. The devotees say that God owns everything and has no need of food. But by such offerings, the devotee is made conscious of Krishna, and loving reciprocation with God is established. After the food is offered to Krishna, it becomes prasadam, or Krishna's mercy. Devotees distribute this prasadam freely to everyone, for its effect is said to be spiritually purifying. Thus, every Sunday, more than 100 Krishna temples worldwide are filled with guests who partake of Krishna's mercy in the form of sweet rice and burfi and chapatis and halwa, and even something called Brahmin spaghetti. Prasadam knows no national boundaries, no creeds or classes. Here the devotees are distributing prasadam at Bhaktivedanta Manor, the Society's European headquarters in London. Here, as elsewhere, philosophical differences are reconciled over laddus and tamarind water. Prasadam is also distributed throughout India by the Krishna devotees. Future of the Krishna consciousness movement, one of Prabhupada's first disciples, Rupanuga Das Goswami, gives us his opinion.
There have been literally hundreds of versions of the Bhagavad Gita in the Western world, and not one of them has produced a single Krishna conscious person. But since the appearance of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, so many people throughout the whole world have revived their original dormant Krishna consciousness. People are becoming purified by this knowledge. It does not require a change in activity, that one shave his head, or change his clothes, give up his job, or leave his family. What is required is a change in consciousness, a change in heart. 500 years ago, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu predicted that this movement will go to every town and village in the world.
That film actually was kind of tailored for the outsiders. You might have picked that up. And actually during the sound mix, at that time the sound, when everything came together, you could actually see everything in one piece when you did the sound mix. And we had to edit that, we had a hand crank. You know, the film on a hand crank machine, so nothing was going the right speed for sound or visual. So we just didn't have a really good idea until you put all the tracks up. There were 6 sound tracks, and those were basically the same size of 16 millimeter film. So you had basically 6 reels, being moved by this hand crank through the editing machine. So we really didn't get a good idea until you put all those reels up in a professional sound mixing house. So the person who did the sound mixing, he liked our film, and he called his friend at to be in attendance at the final mix, where you kind of go through and just see if you like everything and changes can be made. So the person who he invited was a distributor. He liked the film very much, so he distributed the film in colleges and universities for many years. So it was well received not only by devotees but outside of it as well. Prabhupada said we use good psychology in making the film. I'm not sure exactly what he meant to today, but it was well received. So, by Krishna's grace. So I think we should end here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.